My name is Erin Harper. I'm 32 years old. I work in payroll for a construction company, and until the day camp told me I had already taken my daughter home, I thought the scariest part of motherhood was all the things you imagine. The fever at 2 a.m., the missed call from school, the silence in the next room when your child is usually loud. I didn't understand then that real terror doesn't always announce itself with sirens. Sometimes it starts with a counselor smiling at you through a chain link gate and saying in a confused little voice, "Mrs. Harper, didn't you already pick Lily up?" My daughter Lily was 7 that summer. She had the kind of bright, determined face that made adults underestimate how stubborn she really was. She loved purple, hated sandwiches with too much edge, and had recently decided she was old enough to correct strangers when they called camp daycare. "It's a program," she would say solemnly, as if she were defending a doctoral dissertation instead of glitter glue and canoe safety. The camp was at a church recreation property 20 minutes from my apartment, tucked behind a baseball field and a line of old pine trees. Nothing fancy, just cabins, a check-in table, a blacktop area for games, and counselors in matching shirts who looked perpetually sunburned and underpaid. But Lily loved it, and I loved that she loved it. After my divorce, that became the standard for a lot of decisions. Not, is this perfect? But, does this let her feel like a kid while I hold the rest of life together? Her father, Matt, had been out of the picture in the practical sense for almost a year. He still called sometimes, still made promises, still said things like, "I'm trying," and "things are complicated," from numbers that changed every 2 months. He paid child support inconsistently, forgot birthdays selectively, and had a way of sounding wounded whenever anyone expected him to behave like a parent instead of a weather system. Our divorce had been final for 11 months, but the emotional part of divorcing Matt had started years earlier, long before any papers were signed. The official reason for the split was irreconcilable differences. The true reasons were more ordinary and more exhausting: lying, disappearing, money slipping through his hands, blaming me for noticing, and one especially ugly winter when I realized I had started checking his mood before deciding whether I was allowed to have one. By the time I left, I wasn't trying to save the marriage anymore. I was trying to keep our daughter from thinking instability was normal. So camp mattered. Routine mattered. The pickup line mattered. Every weekday that summer, I left work at 3:20, drove the same route, parked in the same gravel lot, walked to the same gate, and signed Lily out with the same black clipboard and the same counselor rotation. It was boring in the best possible way. Boring is gold when you're a single mother trying to build safety out of repetition. That Thursday had already been bad before I got to camp. Payroll week. 2 supervisors late on approvals. One employee screaming over a direct deposit issue that turned out to be his own bad account number. My boss asking whether I could just stay a little later, like he had no idea after school pickup existed or believed women solved childcare with posture. I left 12 minutes later than usual, sweaty, annoyed, and mentally running through dinner options while driving. I remember the time on my dashboard when I turned into camp, 4:03 p.m. Not late enough to be a problem, just late enough to feel it in my shoulders. There were fewer cars in the lot than usual. That should have registered. To the checkout table with my keys still to the checkout table with my keys still in my hand. And the counselor there, a college-aged girl named Bree with a sun visor and a braid, looked up, saw me, and frowned in that polite, uncertain way people do when their expectations and reality don't line up cleanly. "Mrs. Harper?" she said. I smiled automatically. "Hey, I'm here for Lily." She blinked once, looked at the clipboard, then back at me, and said, "Why are you here? You already took her home?" I laughed, not because it was funny, because the sentence was too wrong to enter my body any other way. What? Bree turned the clipboard toward herself again, then back toward me, almost apologetically, like maybe the paper would explain what her mouth had just done. "You signed her out at 2:58," she said. I remember because she was one of the first early pickups from swim. I stared at her. There are moments where your brain splits into two tracks. One keeps trying to preserve reality. The other starts cataloging threat. Both were running at once. "You have the wrong child," I said. Bree's face changed, slowly. The kind of change that tells you she had not considered that possibility until now. "No," she said, and her voice lost that lazy end-of-day camp tone. "No, it was Lily Harper, Group C, purple water bottle with stickers." My mouth went dry. "Show me the sheet." She handed it over without arguing. There, on the 258 line, next to Lily Harper's name, was a signature. Mine. Or something close enough to mine to turn my stomach inside out. It wasn't a random scribble. It wasn't a fake name. It was my name, written in the rushed, looped style I actually use when signing school forms or pharmacy pads. Not perfect, but good enough that no 19-year-old counselor checking 10 kids at once would question it. My fingers went numb around the clipboard. "That's not me," I said. Bree just stared at me. I looked past her automatically, toward the cabins, toward the blacktop, toward the field where the younger kids usually waited with backpacks in a tangle near the fence. No Lily, no purple water bottle, no daughter. "Where is she?" I asked. Now Bree looked scared. I thought she left with you." "I am here now," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. "So where's my daughter?" The camp director heard that part. Her name was Denise Carpenter, 40-ish, brisk, practical, always in motion, with a walkie clipped to her waistband and a lanyard that seemed to swing with authority. She came over fast, took one look at my face, then at Bree's, then at the clipboard. "What happened?" Bree swallowed. "Lily was signed out early. Mrs. Harper says it wasn't her." That sentence changed Denise instantly. You could see the administrator drop away and the emergency protocol click into place underneath. "Come with me," she said. I didn't move. "Call 911, I said. "We're going to," she said quickly. "Right now, but I need to confirm details as we call." No one ever tells you how much of crisis is repetition. Names, descriptions, times, last seen, authorized pickup list, shirt color, hair, backpack, shoes. Every fact becomes a rung, and you cling to them because the alternative is screaming. We went into the office. Bree stayed at the gate with a counselor while Denise shut the door and picked up the landline, already dialing. I stood in that tiny office, bulletin board, sunscreen smell, printer humming on a side desk, and listened to her say my daughter's name into the phone while my body went colder and colder. 7-year-old female, possible unauthorized pickup. Guardian is present and did not sign her out. Possible unauthorized pickup. The phrase was too thin for what it meant. Denise asked me questions while she was still on the line. Full name, date of birth, height, weight, description, custody status, father's name, any family members nearby, any restraining orders, any recent threats, any concerns about a specific individual. That last question hit something in me immediately, but not cleanly. Because yes, there was someone, but I did not want it to be him. Matt had not seen Lily in 6 weeks. Not because of a court order, because he kept canceling. First car trouble, then work stuff, then a migraine, then 2 weekends of silence. A month earlier, he had texted me at 11:18 p.m., asking if Lily still had her old stuffed fox because he'd been thinking about better times. I had not replied. He had not followed up. But 3 days before camp, he called from a new number. I almost didn't answer. Something in me did anyway. He sounded strange. Too cheerful at first, then too soft. He asked how Lily was, asked whether camp had all that pickup stuff figured out. I remember the phrase because it annoyed me. Pickup stuff. Like her safety procedures were a loose bundle of inconveniences instead of the entire structure holding my weekday life together. I said yes, they had procedures. Why? He laughed lightly and said, "Relax, I'm allowed to ask about my kid." Then he asked what time I usually picked her up. I lied. I said 5 o'clock. He said, "Right, right," as if confirming something private. When I told Denise this, her jaw tightened. "Is he authorized for pickup?" "No," I said. "Not through camp. He's her father, but I never added him to the list because he's inconsistent and because he told me not to until his work stabilized." That part was true. He had said that. It had felt lazy and selfish then. Now it felt strategic in a way that made me want to be sick. Police arrived in 6 minutes. I know because Denise said they're here, while I was still trying to remember what color Lily's sneakers were that morning. Pink with white soles. Sparkly laces she tied badly. The first officer through the door was a woman named Patel, followed by a younger man who immediately began taking down names, staff positions, and vehicle descriptions from everyone on duty. Patel sat me down in a folding chair and asked me to tell the story from the beginning. Calm voice, direct eye contact, no fake softness. That helped. I told her everything. Routine pickup, the clipboard, the forged signature, Matt's call, the question about camp pickup, the 6 weeks of missed visits, no current restraining order, shared legal custody technically, but physical placement with me, and all visitation arranged in advance due to his inconsistency and lack of stable housing. Patel asked, "Does he know where camp is?" I opened my mouth and then closed it. Yes, of course he did. He had dropped Lily off there once during the second week of camp when I had an 8 a.m. audit meeting. He had complained about the drive and the parking lot and the militant sign-out mom vibe of the front desk, but he had been there. He knew the route, he knew the gate, he knew the clipboards. I put my hands over my mouth for 1 second and then forced them back down because I didn't want to start unraveling before we even had a direction. Patel asked what Matt drove. "Used to be a black Honda," I said, "but he switches cars, borrows from people, sometimes rentals." "Any current address?" I gave the last one I had, which was already probably stale. Meanwhile, the second officer was pulling camp camera footage. Thank God for that. The camp had 2 exterior cameras, one at the gate and one aimed toward the gravel lot. Not great resolution, not cinematic, but enough. They pulled the 2:55 timestamp first. And there he was, Matt. Baseball cap, sunglasses, gray t-shirt, moving with that casual, loose-shouldered gait that used to mean home to me and now made my skin crawl. He was smiling at the gate. Bree, not suspecting anything, checked the sheet. He signed. Lily came running over from the swim line with her towel around her neck, saw him, and lit up. That part almost killed me because she was happy. She thought her father had shown up for her. She hugged him. He crouched, took her backpack, said something to her, and they walked out together holding hands. No force, no drama, no visible fear, a normal pickup, a successful lie. I made a sound then that I hope I never make again. Not a cry exactly. Something torn out of the center of me. Denise touched my shoulder. I shook her off without meaning to, not because of her. Confirm that's him? Yes, I said. And confirm that's him? Yes, I said. And that was when it officially became parental abduction. I had never liked that phrase before. It felt too legal for something so primal. But hearing Patel say it into her radio made the danger sharpen. This was not miscommunication, not custody confusion, not a father picked up his daughter unexpectedly. He had forged my name. He had planned around staff assumptions. He had taken her without telling me where. That is abduction, even if your daughter calls the man dad. The next hour passed in fragments. An alert went out with Matt's name and Lily's description. Patrol cars were sent to the last known address, to his old friend's place, to his brother's apartment, to the motel he sometimes used when he was between jobs and between stories. I called my sister Dana and said, "Matt took Lily," and she said, "I'm on my way," and was there before I even remembered hanging up. My mother called while I was still at camp because somehow family bad news travels faster than weather. I did not answer. I could not absorb her panic on top of mine. Then Patel asked, "Did he ever say where he would go if he needed to think?" That question landed hard because, yes, years earlier, when we were still married and he was in one of his storm out disappear for a day moods, Matt used to drive to a lake cabin outside Benton Ridge that belonged to his uncle. Not really a cabin, more a collapsing fishing property with one working room, a screened porch, and enough family nostalgia around it to keep it from being condemned. I had not thought about that place in years. Benton Ridge, I said. His uncle's property near Carver Lake. I don't know if the uncle still owns it. Patel nodded once and relayed it immediately. Then we waited. No one tells you that waiting after a child is taken feels physical. It has weight. It presses on the sternum and makes language sound far away. Dana arrived and made me drink water, like I was in shock because I was. Denise kept apologizing every 15 minutes until I finally said, "Please stop." Not because I blamed her, but because if one more person said they were sorry without bringing Lily through the door, I was going to scream. At 6:11 p.m., Patel got the call. They found his car, not at the cabin, half a mile short of it, at a gas station off Route 8, where a cashier recognized Lily from the alert and remembered a man buying juice boxes and asking which road still led to Carver Lake if the main turnoff was blocked. Blocked. Construction had closed the direct road that spring. If he hadn't known that, maybe he really had been away longer than I thought. The detail would matter later in weird ways. At the time, all that mattered was that he was close and stupid enough to stop in public. Deputies found the cabin at 6:28. Lily was inside, alive, unhurt, frightened, but physically okay. Matt did not resist. According to the report, he actually seemed surprised they found him so quickly. That detail made me hate him in a new way, not just for taking her, for underestimating how fast the world moves when a mother says that is not a pickup, that is a theft. I did not get to her immediately. There were protocols, medical checks, scene processing, questions, a child advocate. I know all of that intellectually, and I still wanted to tear through every procedure with my bare hands. When they finally brought her to the substation where I'd been redirected, she ran at me so hard both of us nearly went to the floor. "Mommy!" I held her and felt every inch of her with my hands, hair, shoulders, back, arms, like I was counting pieces and making sure all of them were here. She smelled like sunscreen, chlorine, and stale cabin air. She was crying, but not the way I expected. Not terror, confusion, anger. He said you knew, she kept saying into my shirt. He said you said yes. He said it was a surprise daddy day. I closed my eyes. There is a particular cruelty in using a child's hope as camouflage. Later, once she was calmer and wrapped in a sheriff's office blanket with cartoon fish on it, the child advocate asked if she could tell us what happened. Lily said Daddy picked her up and told her Mommy had last-minute work junk and wanted him to take her for a special overnight adventure. He got her a slushie. Don't work right at the lake. And because don't work right at the lake. And because it was more fun if it's a secret. At some point, when she asked why I wasn't coming later, he got mad. Not yelling exactly. That was Matt's talent. He could make a child feel afraid without raising his voice. He said maybe I needed more time away from you, she told the advocate, because you make everything a rule. I nearly vomited. There it was. The real motive, or at least part of it, not love. Not desperation, not some dramatic fatherly reclaiming, punishment, control, a man angry that the systems around his daughter had stopped defaulting to him, deciding to prove he could still bypass them if he wanted. The criminal case moved fast because there was camera footage, a forged signature, and no ambiguity about authorization. Matt's public defender tried to float a custody confusion angle early on. It died immediately. He had signed my name. He had lied to staff. He had taken her to a remote location without informing me. He had concealed the destination. Family court disputes do not include impersonation at a campgate if you expect a judge to like you. At the first hearing, he looked at me like I had betrayed him. That still amazes me. Not because I expected remorse from him anymore, because entitlement that deep will always surprise me a little, no matter how often I meet it. He actually said, through his attorney later, that he only wanted uninterrupted time with his daughter and that I had created an atmosphere where ordinary parental contact felt criminalized. Ordinary parental contact. He forged my name and drove our child to a lake cabin. But to Matt, the crime was that he no longer had automatic access. The family court judge didn't buy any of it. Criminal court didn't either. He ended up with supervised visitation only, mandatory counseling, and charges that stayed on his record even after plea negotiations softened the worst of them. People sometimes ask whether Lily remembers it. Yes. Not every detail. Not the legal part. Not the station or the reports or my face when I saw the forged signature. But she remembers the gate. The surprise of seeing him. The slushie. The cabin. The moment she realized I was not coming. The way adults' voices changed around her once police found them. Children remember emotional weather long after specifics fade. For months after, she asked before every camp day, "You're the one picking me up, right?" Even if I had told her that morning, even if Dana was backup and she loved Dana, she needed the world to say its own shape back to her repeatedly. So I did. Every day, I'm picking you up. If I'm not, Aunt Dana is. No surprises, no secrets, no one else. The camp changed procedures after that, too. Photo ID for every pickup. Printed authorization list with password check for changes. No same-day alterations without phone confirmation to the primary guardian from 2 staff members. Denise sent me the new policy herself before the next session began and said, "Lily changed how we do this." I understood what she meant, and I hated that it had taken a child's abduction to produce competence. But I was grateful anyway. As for me, the biggest change was quieter. I stopped apologizing for being difficult about safety. That sounds small if you've never been trained your whole life to keep things smooth. But for women like me, like a lot of mothers, There is enormous social pressure to be reasonable right up until the moment reasonableness fails publicly enough to become impressive. Before that, caution is often treated like drama. Boundary setting gets called bitterness. Precision gets called control. After that day, I lost my taste for being liked by people who benefited from my looseness. If a form needed one more line, I asked for it. If a school policy felt vague, I challenged it. If a man said, I'd never, I heard that as the beginning of a sentence, not the end of one. A year later, Lily and I drove past the camp on the way to a birthday party. She looked out the window, saw the gate, and said casually, "That's where Daddy told a lie." Not, "That's where Daddy took me." Not, "That's where I got scared." That's where Daddy told a lie. Children are often clearer than adults about where danger begins. It begins before the drive, before the cabin, before the police. It begins at the point where someone decides your trust can be used as a tool. I picked up my daughter from camp that day, eventually. But first, a counselor looked at me, checked her clipboard, and asked why I was there if I had already taken her home. And in that one question, every ordinary ritual of motherhood turned into evidence that someone had been watching closely enough to mimic me. That is the part that still chills me. Not that Matt took her, that he planned for the world to believe it was me.